She asks for your last 3 pay stubs. You don't have any. Not because you're broke, because you haven't worked in 4 years and you're 26. She looks up from the screen. Says it again, slower, like maybe you misheard her. You didn't. Behind her a printer hums, somewhere a phone rings twice and stops. She types your name into a rental system that has a box for employer and no box for anything else. The box is required. You can't submit the form without filling it. You type retired. The system flags it. Not a rejection, a flag. Like the word itself broke something. She calls her manager over. Not because you did anything wrong. Because nobody on this floor has ever seen that word attached to someone your age. You didn't win the lottery. You didn't inherit anything. You didn't sell a company. What you did took 4 years, and it started with the exact same paycheck everyone your age gets. 23. First real paycheck, $2,140. After taxes. Every 2 weeks. You work customer support at a software company called Fenwick Digital. Chat tickets, password resets, billing complaints. Nothing glamorous. Nobody dreams about this job. You split a 2-bedroom with a guy named Trent. Rent's $790, your half. The ceiling fan ticks, every rotation. A small metallic tick, like it's counting something. You don't fix it. Fixing it costs money and time, and right now you don't have a surplus of either. You just learn to fall asleep through the sound. Here's the thing nobody tells you at 23. The first decision is never the big one, it's the small automatic one. You open a Roth IRA on a Tuesday night. In bed, phone in hand, fan ticking above you. You set a transfer, $200 every payday, automatic. You don't decide about it again after that, you just let it run. At this level, nothing about you is interesting yet. Your bank doesn't call, your credit limit doesn't move. You're not flagged as anything, not risky, not valuable, not anything. Just a name on a checking account that holds $600 on a good week. Closer to 200 once rent hits. The system isn't unkind to you. It's just not paying attention. Being invisible at 23 costs you nothing. You check the Roth IRA more than you'd admit. Not from anxiety, from disbelief. 200 becomes 400. 400 becomes 1100. Not a lot of money, you know that. But it's the first number in your life that grew without you doing anything to it that week. Your friend Marisol works at a marketing agency downtown, makes about the same as you, spends her extra 200 somewhere else. A concert, brunch that turns into a whole afternoon. You don't judge her for it. You just notice the money went to 2 different places. And neither of you said a word about it out loud. Nobody discusses this. Not once. You assumed adults had these conversations. They don't. Everyone's quietly making a different choice with the same paycheck. 6 months in, something small happens. Your favorite show drops a new season. Everyone's watching it live. Talking about it at work the next morning. You wait. 3 weeks. Watch it free through a library streaming pass instead of paying for the subscription. You don't tell anyone this. It doesn't feel heroic. It just feels like a decision nobody's watching you make. That's the first version of a pattern. It repeats for the next 17 years. Not deprivation. Just delay. The fan keeps ticking above you every night. You still haven't fixed it. You don't feel like you're building anything yet. You're just not spending $200. That's the whole trick. And it doesn't feel like a trick at all. The $200 was never about the $200. It was about which version of you got to decide where it went. The one at 11 p.m. tonight, or the one 20 years from now, who's never met you yet. 27. You cross 6 figures for the first time. Not income, savings. $104,000 sitting across a Roth IRA and a brokerage account you never told anyone about. The same way people don't tell anyone they started therapy. Still at Fenwick. Promoted twice since the ticket desk. Ops coordinator now. Salaries up to $71,000. Same apartment. Trent moved out 2 years ago. New roommate now. Priya works nights at a hospital lab, never home when you are. Rent crept up to $860. You barely noticed it happen. Here's what actually shifts at this level. Not your life. The mail. A credit card offer arrives. Your name spelled right. Silver ink. $18,000 in available credit. You didn't ask for this. 8 months ago, the same bank capped you at $3,000. Nothing about you changed, except a number sitting quietly in an account they can't even see. Retirement accounts don't show up on a credit report. The bank doesn't know about the $104,000, it's just reading your payment history. Deciding you're worth more rope. You don't take the offer. You don't need $18,000 of anything. You start noticing something else instead. A quiet math problem, running in the background of every conversation with your friends. Marisol gets promoted. Senior account manager, she posts about it. Dinner reservations, a trip to Portugal, booked for April. You're happy for her. Genuinely. But you also do the math without meaning to. Her flight cost $2,000. Yours, if you took it, would have been $2,000, sitting in an index fund for 30 years instead. Worth something like $30,000 by the time you're 60. You don't say this out loud, ever. It makes you sound insufferable, and you know it. So you nod. Ask about the itinerary. This is where the small lying starts. Not big lies, just omissions. Someone asks what you're up to this weekend. You say, not much. Not I'm reading a fun prospectus at my kitchen table. You learn to shrink the true answer down to something that fits in a normal conversation. Cool. A guy you used to sit near at Fenwick texts about a bar opening downtown. Bottle service, $400, split 6 ways. You go. You pay your share. You don't regret it. But walking home, you do the math anyway. That one night cost roughly what your $200 transfer earns in interest over an entire year. Nobody asked you to make that comparison. You made it anyway. The account keeps growing regardless. You raise the transfer to $350 a month after your second raise. You don't feel it leave. That's the part that still surprises you. Money you never see never feels like a loss. By 29, the combined accounts sit at $186,000. Nobody around you knows the number. Not Trent. Not Marisol. Not your parents. You started keeping it that way on purpose, not secrecy. Instinct. You mentioned a balance once to a coworker early on. The conversation got strange fast. Half joke, half something that wasn't a joke at all. So you stopped mentioning it. The account grows in silence. You grow used to the silence too. You're not rich, not close to it, but something has started that most people around you haven't started yet. And the gap is still invisible, because it lives inside a number nobody can see on a credit report, nobody can see on Instagram, and nobody thinks to ask about at a birthday party downtown. $32. Salaries at $112,000 now. You lead a small ops team at Fenwick, 4 people. Titles changed twice more since 29. The work itself didn't change that much. More meetings, same instincts. Here's the number that matters more than the salary. At 23, you kept about 18% of what you took home. At 29, closer to 31%. Now at 32, 44%. And it doesn't feel like sacrifice at all. Your spending barely moved. You upgraded apartments 2 years ago. Your own 1-bedroom now. Rent's $1,210. Sounds like a jump, until you remember your income nearly doubled since the last place. The math still works in your favor. Quietly, every month. Whether you're watching it or not, the ceiling fan makes another appearance. Different fan. New apartment. This one rattles on the highest setting. You fix it in 20 minutes. A $9 part from a hardware store 2 blocks away. But you notice the difference. At 23, you let that sound run for a year. Fixing it felt like an expense. At 32, you fix it in 1 trip. $9 doesn't register as a decision anymore. That's the actual shift at this level, not the number, what the number stops requiring you to think about. The gap between you and your friends stops being about vacations. It gets structural now. Marisol's 32 too. New lease. Double the rent. Her partner wanted the neighborhood with the good coffee shops. She's not wrong to want that, but her free cash flow is tighter than yours now, and she makes more than you do on paper. Nobody would guess that from the outside. Income was never the number that mattered. What was left over always was. You start turning things down automatically. No agonizing. A destination wedding invite arrives. Flights, hotel, a gift, 4 days off work. You do a rough number in your head. Decline politely. Send a gift instead. It doesn't feel like deprivation anymore. It feels like a preference. The same way some people just don't like cilantro. Cole notices this in you before anyone else does. Sales leadership now, at a different company. Good money. Spends most of it. Over drinks, his tab, he insists, he asks why you never seem to want anything. You tell him you want plenty of things. You just don't want most of them enough to trade 20 years of compounding for them. He laughs like it's a bit. You don't correct him. By 34, the combined accounts cross $340,000. The market itself contributed more than half of that growth in a single year. A fact that would have felt unbelievable to the 23-year-old under the ticking fan. Now it barely registers as news. Something quieter changes too. You stop checking the balance every week. Not from disinterest, from trust. You've watched it dip twice, during rough quarters, and recover both times without you touching it. Checking becomes a monthly habit instead of a nervous one. You still don't tell people the number. You never have. But for the first time, you notice yourself measuring decisions differently. Not, can I afford this? Is this worth what it costs me in time later? That question didn't exist for you at 23. Now, it's the only one that matters. The gap between what you earn and what you spend was never just building your account. It was quietly shrinking the number you'd eventually need, doing 2 jobs at once, the whole time, without asking your permission. "37. A regular Thursday morning. Nothing about the date looks special on a calendar. You open the brokerage app before coffee, the way you've done for 14 years now. The number on the screen reads $871,400. You sit with it for a second. Not excitement. Something closer to checking the math problem twice. Your spending, averaged over the last year, comes out to $34,850. Rent, groceries, a car that still runs fine. A few trips you actually took, because delay was never the same thing as denial. Multiply that by 25. $871,250. You've already passed it. This is the whole idea, the one nobody explains clearly until you go looking for it yourself. Multiply your yearly spending by 25. That's your number. Once your investments cross it, you can pull out about 4% a year, and history says the money outlasts you. No app tells you this on day one. No teacher mentions it. You found it in a forum thread at 26 and didn't believe it. You believe it now. You don't quit that day. You're not that person. You keep working 3 more weeks, finishing a project, training the person who will take over your team. Then you write the email, 2 paragraphs. No drama. You walk into your manager's office to say it out loud too, because email felt like it wasn't enough. She asks if you got another offer. You say no. She asks if everything's okay at home. You say everything's fine. She doesn't have a third question because there isn't a normal reason left on her list. That's the first version of something you'll get used to. People assume there's a hidden reason, because I saved enough doesn't sound like a real answer to most people. Your last Friday feels like the start of a long weekend. Familiar. You've had plenty of long weekends. It's the Tuesday after that feels different. 10:40 in the morning, coffee going cold in your hand, no meeting starting, no red notification dot filling up behind your name. Your body keeps waiting for the next thing to happen, and nothing does. You stand in your kitchen for a while, not doing anything, and it doesn't feel like freedom yet. It feels like weather. Something too big to hold on to with your hands. You don't tell your parents that week. You don't post anything. You go to the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon, which you've never once done in 14 years. And the store is nearly empty, and something about that emptiness makes the whole thing feel real for the first time. 14 years of $200 transfers, $350 transfers, raises that went into the account instead of into your rent. A ceiling fan you didn't fix for a year because $9 used to mean something. None of it looked like anything most days. All of it was this. The number was never the point. The point was the space between what came in and what went out. And that space did 2 jobs at once the whole time, without asking you. You start going to the YMCA on Ashcroft, not for the equipment, for the mornings. It opens at 6. It's free with the membership you already had, And on weekday mornings, before the gym crowd and the after-school kids, the building holds a strange mix of people. Retirees, a couple of guys who clearly slept somewhere else last night, and you. There's a man there most mornings named Walt, 78. Spent 31 years fixing HVAC systems in commercial buildings before his knees gave out on him. Second week, he asks without really looking up from his coffee. What happened to you? Not, what do you do? What happened? You tell him. He goes quiet for a second, says, huh, turns back to his crossword. Later that same week, he tells you the thing that actually stays with you. He says he got out at 65 and his knees got out at 58. 7 years in between, working a body that was already done working. You think about that more than you expected to. The forms never really stop, even after you leave the job behind. Your niece's school needs a volunteer chaperone for a field trip. You sign up. The form has a line, occupation, employer. You sit with the cursor blinking in that box longer than it should take. You type self-employed. It's technically not a lie, and it invites a follow-up question you don't have a clean answer for. Next time, you try consultant. People accept it instantly. That's the part that gets you, how little anyone actually wants to dig deeper once you give them a normal-sounding word. Eventually, you just write, retired. The office worker glances at the word, then at your face, then back at the word. She doesn't ask. She's decided it's easier not to. Cole calls one afternoon, wants to grab lunch. You haven't seen him in maybe a year. He's a regional VP now. $275,000 a year, a team of 30 under him. A job title that looks like a staircase on his profile. He says, must be nice twice during lunch. The second time, it isn't a joke. Then he leans in and asks, quieter, if everything's okay. Health-wise. He's not being rude, he genuinely can't find another explanation. Nobody he's ever met just stopped, healthy, at 37, for no reason he can name. You tell him you're fine. He doesn't fully believe you, you can see it. And it lands strange because you expected people to be jealous. Instead, they're just confused, and confusion turns into quiet suspicion faster than jealousy ever does. That's the part nobody prepares you for. It's not the isolation of having more than everyone around you. It's the isolation of nobody having a category for what you did. Cole picks up the check. You let him. Small thing, but it means something to him, so you don't argue about it. He tells you, almost as an aside near the end of lunch, that he's stuck. Mortgage runs $5,200 a month. 2 car payments. Private school starting for his older kid next year, second one the year after that. He brings home around $209,000 after taxes, spends about $186,000 of it. He saves $23,000 a year. He's not bad with money. He's just never once run the actual number. You don't offer to run it for him. He didn't ask, but walking back to your car afterward, you do the math anyway, out of habit. 25 times what he spends a year comes out to $4,650,000. He earns more than double what you ever earned at Fenwick. And the finish line sits over 4 times further away from him than it ever did from you. And it keeps sliding further out every time he gets promoted. You don't feel superior about it. You just feel the specific loneliness of knowing something true that would sound insufferable if you said it out loud. Walt's still at the Y most mornings. Crossword. Black coffee, same seat. He never asks you what you do anymore. He already knows the answer doesn't fit on a form and he stopped needing it to. You've never had to think about health insurance the way you do now. At Fenwick, it was a line on a paycheck you barely looked at. Now, you're the one buying it, and the price depends entirely on a number you get to choose. You meet with a broker named Yesenia in a small office above a dry cleaner, 2 blocks from the Y. She pulls up a spreadsheet and starts asking questions nobody at a normal job ever asks you. How much income are you planning to report this year? You tell her you can basically pick the number. She looks up from the screen like that's not a sentence she hears often. Here's the part she walks you through, slow, because it matters, and because most people never learn it until it costs them something. Your money doesn't sit in a paycheck anymore. It sits in a fund that owns a slice of the whole market. Income, for you now, is a decision. You sell a few shares when you need cash, and you choose how many. The government only sees whatever you decide to sell. So there are two lines drawn in the sand, and nobody designed them to sit anywhere near each other. The first line is about taxes. When you sell something you've owned more than a year, the profit gets its own tax rate, and that rate can be zero. In 2026, a single person can report up to $49,450 of that kind of profit and pay nothing on it. Add the standard deduction on top, and you can cash out $65,550 total and owe zero federal tax. The second line is about health insurance. Go above 4 times the poverty line, $62,600 for one person, and the help you get toward your premium doesn't shrink gradually. It disappears completely. $1 over the line and you pay full price the next month. Sit with that for a second. The tax code stops rewarding you at $65,550. The health system stops helping you at $62,600. They're $2,950 apart. Almost touching. Nobody planned it that way. It's just two separate systems that happen to land close together. So you keep your reported income near $30,000 a year. About 190% of the poverty line. The mid-level plan in your county costs $585 a month. You pay $155 of it. The rest, about $5,200 a year, gets covered. Yesenia mentions, almost in passing, that the nurse who took your blood pressure at your last checkup makes about $71,000 a year and pays close to 4 times what you pay for the same plan. You don't say anything. You just nod. You didn't build that gap. You just read the rules correctly, the same way you read the automatic transfer correctly 17 years ago. But you notice you never bring this up at dinner with anyone. Not Cole. Not Marisol. It's the kind of true thing that sounds like bragging the second it leaves your mouth, even when it isn't meant that way. That's the part of this level that actually sits with you longer than the numbers do. You're not hiding money. You're hiding the fact that you understand a system most people never get the reason to look inside. Walking out of Yesenia's office, past the dry cleaner, past a bus stop where a woman is checking her phone for a job alert, you think about how invisible this whole thing is. No sign says, quietly qualifies for a subsidy. No badge, nothing to see. Just a number you chose, sitting exactly where two systems decided, without asking each other to draw their lines. The market gives you 6% that first year after you leave Fenwick. You relax a little. That's the mistake. Year 2, it takes 24% away. Year 3, another 9%. The whole way down, you're still pulling $34,850 a year to live on. Selling shares straight into the drop because groceries don't pause for a bad quarter. 3 years in, the account reads $592,000. $279,000 gone. Nearly a decade of spending erased while you sat completely still. Here's the number that actually keeps you up at night. 34,850 divided by 592,000 comes out to 5.9%. You started at 4. You're now pulling out at a speed that, looking back over the last century of markets, runs dry about 1 time in 5. 1 time in 5 isn't a rounding error. It's a real number, sitting on your kitchen table at 11 in the morning, on a laptop, with nobody around to talk you through it. This is the part that never makes it into a highlight reel. There's no scene, no dramatic phone call, just you, a spreadsheet, and the quiet realization that you might have been wrong about the whole thing 8 years ago and just hadn't found out yet. The apartment thing happens around here too, the one you didn't see coming. You're renting a bigger place now, closer to the Y, and the leasing office wants your last 3 pay stubs. You don't have any. Haven't had any in 4 years. The woman behind the desk, Nadia, asks again, slower, like maybe you misheard the question the first time. You didn't. You explain the accounts, the withdrawal rate, the whole thing. She's kind about it actually, but her system has a box labeled employer, and the box is required and retired makes the software flag your application instead of processing it. You end up needing a letter from a CPA and a deposit twice the normal size. It works. It just takes 3 extra weeks and a version of the same conversation you've had a dozen times by now. You don't get angry about it anymore. You've stopped expecting the forms to have a box for you. Then, in February, a recruiter named Priya, different Priya, not your old roommate, calls about a contract gig. Freelance marketing consulting, 11 months, $68,000 total. She's called you 3 times over the past 2 years. You never called back. This time you do. Not because you're scared, because you finally understand something you couldn't say out loud before. You weren't afraid of running out of money. You were afraid that if the number failed, everyone who'd asked must be nice, would find out you'd been wrong the whole time in public at 37. You take the contract, work 7 of the 11 months, add $43,000. More importantly, you stop selling shares for 7 straight months while the market repairs itself underneath you. Somewhere around month 4, sitting in a meeting about a campaign that gets killed before it launches, you say the true thing out loud to a stranger for the first time. A woman on the project, someone you'll never see again after this contract ends, asks what you did before this. You tell her the real answer, not consultant, not self-employed. The actual thing. She doesn't flinch, doesn't ask if you're okay, just says that's the dream, honestly, and goes back to her notes. It's such a small moment. It shouldn't matter this much. But it's the first time anyone's heard the real answer and treated it like a normal sentence instead of a puzzle to solve. You finish the contract, don't renew it. The market climbs back the way it always eventually does, without announcing itself or asking permission. By 44, the account sits past $940,000 again. There's one more bill waiting, and you already know about it, it just hasn't arrived yet. Social Security gets calculated off your best 35 years of earnings. You worked 14 of them. The other 21 don't get skipped. They count as zeros, and zeros drag the average down hard. Your statement estimates around $1,710 a month at 67. Cole, who'll probably work until at least 62, is looking at something closer to $3,210. A gap of about $18,000 a year. Every year. Starting 23 years from now. You knew this the whole time. You bought back 18 years with it. That's not a complaint, it's just the actual price written down the way Yesenia writes numbers down. Flat, no adjectives, just the math sitting there for you to look at whenever you're ready. The years after that go quietly, which is the part that catches you off guard the most. You expected something dramatic to keep happening. Instead, you got Tuesdays. Thousands of them, one after another, mostly unremarkable. You learn to sail, badly, at a lake 2 hours out. You take care of your mother for 14 months when she can't be left alone. No meetings to reschedule, no manager to ask permission from, nothing but the actual time itself, which you have plenty of. At 54, Cole gets laid off. Company restructuring, the kind that hits directors just as hard as anyone else. The severance is decent. The job market, for someone his age, in his role, is not. It takes him 11 months to find something new, at $240,000 a year. He calls you during the gap, voice a little different than you've ever heard from him. He tells you he ran his own numbers during those 11 months. Says the answer came back 68. He doesn't say 68 what? He doesn't have to, you both know. At 62, the people you started out with begin to stop, one at a time. Some by choice. Some because a knee or a company made the decision for them. There are parties, cakes from the grocery store, plastic dome still on, cards passed around with everyone's signature crammed into the margins. You go to the parties, you're happy for them, genuinely. You've also been doing this, whatever this is, for 25 years, by the time they're just starting. You've learned not to say that part out loud either. Here's what the money actually bought, said plainly, one time. Between 37 and 62, at roughly 260 weekday mornings a year, that's somewhere around 6,500 of them. Mornings that belonged entirely to you. Bought with $200 transfers, a fan you didn't fix for a year, a wedding you skipped, a subscription you waited 3 weeks to watch for free. Nobody photographs that. There's no highlight reel for 6,500 ordinary mornings. But that's the actual purchase. Not a boat. Not a beach. Just time. bought back in small pieces, starting with a paycheck that looked exactly like everyone else's. You still fill out the occasional form. Hospital waiting room, a few years back, filling one out for a friend. Occupation, employer. You've had almost 30 years to come up with a good answer, and you still don't have one. You write, retired. The clerk looks at the word, then at your face, then at your date of birth, then back at your face. Decides not to ask. You stopped needing anyone to understand a long time ago. Somewhere right now, in a city that isn't yours, a 22-year-old is refreshing a banking app on their phone, standing in a break room, waiting for their first real paycheck to clear. They open a Roth IRA that same week, set a transfer for $100. Barely think about it once it's done. They have no idea what that $100 is actually buying. They think it's about retirement someday. It isn't. It's about a Tuesday morning, decades from now, standing in a kitchen with coffee going cold and nothing happening at all. And that will be the whole point.